listening to In-Fisherman Storyline, North America's top voice in multi-species freshwater angling. Here is your host, Thomas Allen.
Well, hey, welcome to another edition of In-Fisherman Storyline. This is another one of our after-hours editions. Anything goes. In fact, we're doing everything from got some ice in a cup and an adult beverage, and this is the first time for everything. But that's Chad. He's working on a burrito, and I can't say that I have ever recorded anything for any type of professional publication where a man's working on a burrito. So, Chad, welcome to In-Fisherman Storyline.
Cheers. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
That is Chad Foster. He is we're going to get into your story a little bit tonight. I want to hear some of your tales from the trail, if you will. In Brainerd, there's a short list of anglers who are I guess they manage the accounts here in the bass tournament leagues. And Chad is one of those, but it didn't come by accident. He spent some time fishing professionally and actually went fished FLW for a while and fished the cup. So I know you got a mouthful, but I'm going to have you elaborate on that here just for a brief second. What year was that?
2018.
2018. Okay.
Yep. On Lake Ouachita.
Did you like that place?
I had a blast.
Yeah, there's a lot of fish in there, but they're little.
It was funny. In practice for the cup, literally the first couple hours I went to a bar, threw a top water, and caught a couple nice ones. I'm like, oh, this is easy. And the next 3 days, I don't think I caught another largemouth.
Yeah. It's been a long time since I've been there. And next to him, we'll come back. We want more of this story. He's busy working on that burrito, but where are we at here? Brad. Oh. I'm working on this button machine. This is a new thing I got, so you're going to have to bear with me as I kind of get through this. Brad Hawthorne, good friend, is a guide on Mille Lacs. He's known for his weekly ice updates on the lake, which I saw you out there today, risking life and limb to provide an update on the ice conditions out there. We're going to talk about that a little bit, but how much ice we got out there?
None. There's a little bit of shore ice, but the main lake is open. So I would say at this point,
hold off,
just chill out a little bit, or bring the boat. One of the two. Well,
the good news is it's terrible cold out there tonight. So if that wind would ever lay down, we would probably end up with some real good ice, which I think is coming. I think we're going to have a good winter.
Yep.
And then on the other side, you might recognize this guy. He did the first edition of After Hours, and he's one of my favorites. He's a bit of a drama queen. Says a lot of bad words, and he insults me on the regular, but I can't help it. Just there's almost an element of love here, wouldn't you say?
I would agree. Yeah.
Brandon Cizek is another one of those account managers here in a local bass league, but he's pretty good at breaking podcast equipment. He's been kind of futzing with that thing over there for 15 minutes. If you can manage to not bump that off the table again tonight, that'd be great.
Your mount is first class over here.
Yeah, I need to probably drill a hole in that table.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good deer camp table, though. Anyway, Brandon is he's great for opinions because he's one known for speaking his mind, and I think that's part of his charm. So that's the crew tonight. We're not gonna really set a time limit here. We've got a basic theme, but we've got a lot of topics to cover. Brad told me he wrote a list that's about 20 items long and didn't bring it, so he's gonna do his best to remember that. But this is kind of a state of the industry going into winter kind of discussion, and I think that there's a lot of positivity. It's early December here. The election was a month ago, and I think without taking this podcast down the political path, we're just going to say spirits are high. A lot of good things happen, and I think that we're all looking forward to the future, I guess, with open minds, and hopefully everything we were promised is going to come true. So we'll kind of leave it at that. But Brad, I'm going to start with you. We have, you and I have spent a lot of time on the ice together. We've talked about technology. I don't want to, we've talked about how that's affected the fishing business some on this show, and it's open game. Don't feel like you can't talk about it, but it's that time of year where things are changing. We got new stuff coming out. All brands are promising new items in the next couple, at least until I cast. Mm-hmm. So for a while, what's your with the people that you deal with, the clientele that are coming to rent houses and fish with you coming up this year, what's the feel? Are they excited to come? Do they feel like they're going to make up for last year?
Yeah, there's so much pent up energy in the industry right now.
Yes,
because we've had 3 bad years of ice, and it's been kind of miserable working out there in that. But with that, you have on the horizon here, we have one of the best ice years we're setting up. We are teed up to have an awesome year, and the industry needs that. And the clientele, my phone's been ringing off the hook. People want to know. That's why I've been getting out there really religiously and doing those ice reports, just to kind of, we have to pull back the reins just a little bit right now.
Mm-hmm.
But people are excited and they want to get out there and they want to do it because the one thing that remains is we live in Minnesota and we get winters.
Well, we're staring down the pipe at a good one at this point. I mean, it's been very cold early. If the wind would settle down, my gosh, has the wind stopped blowing on Mille Lacs?
No, if you go on Eddie Lieback's Facebook page right now, he's got a picture out there of Hennepin Island, which is about 1.5 miles, 2 miles out in front of his place. And you can, if you zoom in on the pictures, you can see the like 5 and 6 foot whitecaps rolling right up to the ice edge and busting. It's really cool.
I suppose there's a bunch of ice on those seagull poop covered rocks.
Yeah, they're not white anymore.
Not white. They're getting cleaned off finally.
Yeah.
That's the way to do that. Well, so talk a little bit about what you spend your days managing. Do you manage a resort or are you a guide?
I've been a full-time guide for 23 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the winter I guide on the ice, and in the summer I do walleye and smallmouth on Mille Lacs, and that's all I've been doing. That's kind of been my story for the last 20 some years.
That's a good story. I know you're good at it. You didn't put me on any fish though when I needed you last time.
I know. I mean, well, sometimes I see some finger pointing, go, hey, some projects are more difficult than others.
Go ahead and say it.
I
gave you the
catch
camera.
one anyway.
There it is. Can you believe this guy? Anyway, you do spend a lot of time year round doing this stuff. So do you feel like the overall? I feel like when you work in this industry, you can kind of get a pulse of the positivity or the motivation for people to go fishing. And I think that really hinges on our desire to help innovate, to write stories, to film stuff, to share content. It motivates everybody. How would you say that what's the word I'm looking for? The position of the buyer, the consumer mindset right now, is it pretty high?
I would say so. So right now, everyone wants the best technology. That's where everyone's sitting. And if you're the guy that's been holding back and not wanting to commit to using this technology, by now you're either losing tournaments, in last place, or even if your core group of buddies, if you're not using it, you're catching less fish. So how can someone that catches less fish call themselves a fisherman? That's kind of where we're sitting at now. I mean, whether you like it or hate it, it catches more fish. If you like fishing, I mean, that's what you're doing. And the consumer level, I think right now, they're kind of looking at this. They're loving it because from their point of view, you have 3 different companies right now competing to be the best at this. Mm-hmm. And it's on the other end, on their end. They're getting the best of both worlds on it. That's
right. Well, in ice fishing, there's a lot of technological applications that people can take advantage of. And I think that it's a good time right now to get out and try some stuff. And one of the things that I feel is one of the top topics I want to discuss with you guys is basically the price of boats. That's one of the things that we're all faced with. I know that Chad is, if you haven't sold your boat, you're looking to, and you're going to make an update. I know Brandon is going to. I just bought my new boat. What's your situation?
I ordered a 2025 and had it delivered back in June. So I bought early and holding over the winter is what I'm doing.
So Chad, one of the things we talked about, and I thought you had a great opinion on this, I've been waiting to ask you this for a while, is you have done a great job. And there's nothing wrong with your rig, but a guy that fishes as often and as effectively as you, why not have a brand new shiny boat?
Mine's paid for. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I don't like payments.
Mm-hmm.
So it's paid for. The next boat I get won't have a payment either.
You won't have payment?
Mm-mm. So
it clearly works.
It does work. There's no argument about that. But so getting into the boat owner scenario, you don't have to have the greatest rig to be successful. You can go out and have a good time with almost anything.
No, and that same boat is the same boat that I fished the Forest Wood Cup with.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kicking around fishing classic bass this year, and if I don't sell my boat, I do it out of the same boat.
So, what was your very first boat? Do you remember that? I remember mine plain as day.
The very first boat that I traveled the different lakes with was, I don't even remember the year, but it was a super old custom crestliner that somebody built out the front deck and had some crappy live wells and that kind of thing. And I actually had it up in Bemidji when I was going to school up there. I fished out of that boat for a long time. It was, what was it, 15 foot, 16 foot? I think it had a 50 horse
I remember
two-stroke
it well.
Yamaha on it.
I remember it well.
Wasn't the Fishhawk.
Oh, this was pre-Fish.
This was pre-Fishhawk.
Okay.
The Fishhawk was great.
Yeah.
That was like a brand new boat for me. This was a red beat up, and it had like tri-colored parallel marking on the carpet. It was ugly.
I think they have to be. Mine had a tree growing out of it when I found it.
But you know what? Floated.
It did float.
Yeah.
I caught my first muskie out of that boat. I did not fish a tournament out of that boat, and I've probably talked about it on here a time or two. I did have a boat that I hauled around with a minivan.
That's classy.
Yeah.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Well, it worked.
Get to the lake.
I'm not going to sit here and say I won money out of it because current company would not believe that. But
Get Jeremy on here. I'll ask him.
You want to hear a story?
No, we don't have time for your story.
Oh, come on. You do. So
I want to hear it.
So that's that boat, and Jeremy will. I wish he could contribute to this because this is a friend of mine. Jeremy was on the last After Hours podcast. He knows a lot of my dark secrets, unfortunately. But I had a 16-foot lawn that I gutted and I turned into a bass boat. You know, I'm using finger quotes there, and put carpet on it and storage areas, all that garbage, live well. And I went to fish a tournament, and this was within a week of me putting a new transducer on the back of the boat. And I think it was for it was one of those square Humminbirds. It was like a 535. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had that on there. Transducer was sticking off the back, and this lake we fished was full of timber. And this is the first time I'd fished with that new transducer. I was excited. I'm like, I'm going to learn all kinds of stuff, and managed to get the boat high centered on a log. And Iowa's full of idle, they're no wake lakes, so you can't go fast. So I just managed to wedge myself up on there. And the only way I was able to move the boat was in a circle because it was stuck on this stump. And it was back and forth. And Jeremy saw this whole thing go down. And when I finally am rocking it back and forth, it popped off the log and broke off my brand new transducer. I saw it floating back there as I was driving, and I drove that son of a gun right back to the ramp, put it on the trailer, and went home. I'd had enough.
Pouting.
Yeah. So that's what I did with that boat. And I decided I probably shouldn't have nice things at that point. So back to buying a new boat. I think we're at a point where I've never seen, everything gets more expensive. Everything gets harder to buy, but how do you afford a new boat in today's day? Like you have it. Is it a rich man's sport? Is it becoming that? What do you think?
If you don't plan for it, yeah. Kind of. With the live scope transducers, all of your electronics.
Batteries.
I mean, you can have my first Crestliner with the parallel colored carpet, and then just put electronics on it, and all of a sudden it's worth $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
Or 30.
Yeah.
Or or 30.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. I guess it depends on how you want to rig it, right? I think it helps that a lot of the primary circuits are regulating their electronic use.
Mm-hmm.
I think that needed to happen.
Yeah, we need to talk about that. That's on my list here. But so when it comes to purchasing a boat, let's say your ultimate goal is to have a nice boat, is to have something new, is to have, I don't know if it's off the lot, but we'll just call new 3 years. Okay. A 3-year-old boat. If you were to work in that direction and you're talking with somebody that has never spent the time or the money to investigate or buy a boat, where would you tell them to start? And then, okay. And it's not like somebody that has a trust fund. It's us. It's guys that have to work for a living. I know what you're thinking, Brandon.
Here we go.
So what would be your advice to somebody looking to get into a nice boat eventually?
A nice boat eventually? Where are they going to start? That's like just from the beginning?
Yeah, that's a question I'd start with, but
do you have a trade-in boat? Like, what do you got?
Yeah. Like,
you're starting out without anything.
And
where are you at financially?
Okay.
Right? Do you want to be boat broke?
Mm-hmm.
You can buy a boat and then have no extra money if you're going to finance it.
Mm-hmm.
Go buy an Icon or something. It's $140,000.
That's boat, motor, trailer, right? Just that thing.
Yeah, that's what they are.
It is about what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Now you put electronics on it and your trolling motor and everything else.
How about some of the big walleye boats and stuff? I mean,
Yeah.
buy a new 22-foot Vexus or Camus or
Anything.
where do you want
to take this?
Yeah.
Let's go down to the saltwater.
Yeah.
Right. I know we're up here in Minnesota. It's not saltwater, but You're familiar with that a little bit.
That's honestly, I think we're putting back in the day, saltwater boats had the most expensive electronics. Now that's kind of flip-flopped. Really.
Yeah.
I would agree. Because
You go down to the salt, those guys don't have
end.
anything.
They don't have anything on
Some
the
of them
front
don't
end
even have trolling motors on the bow mounts. It's like, what do you guys do?
No.
Float around.
And I think it's starting to evolve. Gosh, I don't remember his name, but Thousand Lake Charters.
Logan.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. He's
Logan.
hated down there.
Excuse me?
He's hated down there.
because he has
where guides.
electronics.
Because he's what, is he 22, 3?
He's him and another buddy. I don't remember his name either, but they both have jumped on the live scope game, and
they got
they've
live
figured out how to
scopes.
catch all this stuff with live scope,
Yeah.
and all the other guides are not fond of them.
Yeah, he's charging whatever, $1,500 a trip to go catch tarpon.
Full day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But drive out there. Oh, there they are. Cast your giant swim bait out there, catch a 150 pounder. And all the other old school guides are soaking dead bait on the bottom and pulling around. And it's just like fishing up here. Do you want to go catch some or do you not?
Yeah,
That's what it boils down to.
You want a boat ride?
Yeah. You want to go look at the Everglades and see some herons and some manatees? That's cool. But you want to go catch a tarpon? It's $1,500 and I'll take you to catch them.
How different is that from up here right now, though?
It's not. It's the same thing.
Okay, hold this thought. This is I want this to go that direction, but
I veered pretty hard.
It's called the weave. Remember, it's the weave. You got to weave in the sideline stories. But you're talking to somebody that's maybe it's a kid, maybe it's somebody that's got their first job out of college and they eventually want to own a new boat. What's the path to that? If you're going to finance, you want to finance minimally, but what's the right way in your mind to do that?
The right way in my mind is buy something you can afford.
Yeah.
The first boat I bought, it was like $2,500. Granted, now this day and age, it would probably be equivalent to $5,000, right? It wasn't anything special. It was a small boat, but it got me on the water. It didn't have electronics on it, and I just went fishing. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Mhm.
And I still do that with my boat today, right? It's some of my favorite in the fall. Is some of my favorite because I don't have to use the live scope the way I like to fish as much as I would in the summertime. And you just rip down the bank and go fishing. And then work your way up, right? There's an opportunity, and I know Brandon's done it. I've done it. A lot of guys have done it. There's a lot of opportunity in buying these boats that you find for a pretty cost-effective deal, and all of a sudden you can turn it the right time of year and maybe make $1,000 or $2,000 and save your pennies, right? Pretend like you have a payment on that boat and just put $200 away every single month. And all of a sudden in 4 or 5 years, when you want to upgrade that boat, now it's like, holy buckets, I got this little pot. Now buy a boat for 10 grand.
This is exactly what I was hoping for. Brandon and I talked about this not too long ago, I think during a run up to the deer camp, but you did this growing up or over the last whatever number of years, found cheaper boats and figured out a way to make them more valuable and turn a profit on them. This is what I think people don't know about, and especially where we live, I think there's a lot of opportunity to buy reasonably priced boats that people are looking to get rid of and flip it. Don't get too emotionally attached.
Time of year is huge, I think.
Yeah.
It's
Buy right now.
in my industry is the same way. It's people, there's so many people out there that buy things seasonally, and I'm not saying they can't afford them, but they got to have this in the summer. They got to have a snowmobile in the winter. They got to have a fish house in the winter. And when that season is done, they got to get rid of it. Like, because they A, can't afford it, B, can't, they don't want to make the payments, whatever it might be, but store it, winterize it, all the things. So I'd say I would totally agree with Chad. I mean, I started the same way. I had a 14-foot red Lund that I pulled behind my little Mazda pickup truck. It had a 12-volt transom mount Minn Kota trolling motor. I literally back trolled around reed patches and threw my jig in there and caught largemouths. And
You can do it today.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then, when I grew out of that one, I got the next step and the next step, and it's.
So you're essentially squirreling away little bits of profit on the boat sales over the years.
Yeah. And you don't necessarily sell everything and make money on it, but
Right. But
the-
you can look for that.
to go walk into a boat dealer and buy a new boat and then want to get rid of it in a year or two, like you better bend over.
Yeah, you're not.
Because it's gonna hurt.
Well, and Brad, add to this. I mean, I know that you've been through the same thing for a lot of years. Do you flip a boat every year, every other year?
Yeah. So we run. I have the 2075 Impact, and then we have the Tiller when I do smaller lakes. But advice, I got lucky, man. When I started, my first boat was, remember Crystal Piers Marine?
Absolutely, I bought my first Skeeter boat there.
Yeah, that's so they went out of business, and they did a deal where they financed you. Well, I get a call one day, and they said, hey, your note's due on that boat. And I'm like, no, it's not. I got 7 years on this. They're like, nope, not anymore. You got to either go get financing or pay this thing off. I called my dad. I'm 19 years old. I don't know what to do. He says, you call him back and you tell him you'll give him this. He asked me how much money I had. And I had like $4,000 in the bank. And I called him back and I said, I'll give you $4,000. And the guy goes, bring it to me right now. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to be broke. But
I'm gonna have a boat.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a boat. And that's how that started. And to your point, I built on that. So I built on that, used the boat to start working, and to get to that point, to be able to flip them is still difficult. When guys come to buy the boats every year, a lot of times I'm taking electronics off to make the deal work.
Right.
You have to be metric with these deals. 2 years ago, I had a guy come to me. He really wanted to buy the boat. I wanted him to have it. And we were like $5,000 apart. So I started taking screens off. And we took a couple screens off and made the deal work.
Yeah. But the long run here is you still need to be willing to part with the rig.
Yeah.
And I think the first couple of boats I had, so I had this double wide, double deep John boat, I was driving south from the cabin. I was in Monticello, and some guy rear-ended me in a van and pushed the boat up on the tailgate up over my dog in the kennel up onto the top of the pickup. And I spent $200 on the boat, but I had to get it out of there. So I had to put new tires on it, had to cut the tree down that was growing out of it, paid another $400 to get the motor running. And it was, after I had it going, I had it insured for $2,500 because once it was fixed and working and I didn't have electronics on it. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Hello.
Hear what?
So
fries are done.
Yeah. Anyway, I could go for some French fries right now, or a burrito.
We at Westwood?
Sorry.
Anyway, where was I?
I don't know. You're talking about some boat.
Don't get emotionally attached to a rig. So if you're wanting to work your way up, I feel like that there's a precedent set now that if you're not fishing out of a fully rigged bass boat, that you're not fishing. And I think that's a completely misconception, or it's just not fair.
I don't think it's only that. I think it's a lot of people are worried about the way they look.
People think.
What do people think? I'm fishing out of this. There's no way. I'm not going to go compete with all those guys just because I'm in this boat and they're in those boats.
Yeah.
Like people are like, I'm going to get my ass kicked. It's like, why? It's all
I
all
love
up in your head.
I absolutely love, like, when Chad and I go, well, you're there Thursday nighters, and those 14-year-old kids are in them little tin boats.
I do too.
That's what we were doing when we were 14.
Yeah. And those are the kids that are going to do well.
That's right. And I think that in this day and age, seeing that gives me hope for kids like that
100%.
that are willing to do that kind of thing. And I'm not afraid, or I'm not above. I've kind of helped my son get established with a boat, and I don't have any pictures with me, but he's going to be set up better than I ever was.
Oh yeah, he's got a
But he paid for half of it. He worked 70 hours all summer.
Yeah.
Came up with some money. Barn find. We got to talk about this. It's a cool rig, but it's a guy that was over 80. I think it was mid 80s, and I think he said he had a year or two to live, according to the doctor. And he's like, I need to get rid of it. I need it to go to the right person. He cared enough.
That's cool.
And anyway,
Super cool.
It's a sweet rig. It's going to take some work, but I don't want I've wanted him to appreciate that, because he didn't have to have the crappy boats that I did. But I think that we've done that in general with our kids. You want them to have better than you. You want them to be better equipped. And if I've overstepped, I guess, I don't think Tommy's the kind of kid that wouldn't appreciate that, but that might set a different precedent for the point I'm trying to get at, is what I'm saying. And I'm not above being called a hypocrite. So
I'm not above calling you.
I know Brandon will keep me straight here, but the bottom line is I think you need to identify where you're at, find a way to get on the water.
I love Chad's idea. Like, you buy what you can afford, and then you pick away, and you want a new depth finder, you save for that thing. And
Mhm.
once you get that, then you save for the next thing. And you just, if that's your passion, like it's his passion and it's my passion and it's Brad's passion, like that's what you're saving your dough for.
Mhm.
You're not, and you want a new 10-inch screen and a LVS 34 transducer, then you're gonna have to go ring the cashier at Fleet Farm for a while.
Don't you have one of those for sale?
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. Strange.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I know a guy.
Well, I hear there's some new stuff coming out. So,
there is some new stuff coming.
ahead
But
of the curve.
so the point I want you to elaborate on, Chad, this was a good idea, is when you go to these tournaments, the Thursday nighters, the Bass Nation events, you kind of stair step your way up and do some larger events, right? You see somebody that's got a sweet rig. Do you let that intimidate you, or do you keep your eyes on the fish?
There's always going to be something in the back of your head, right? All the time. Like I'd be lying if I said I didn't care, right? I mean, I didn't care enough where I wasn't going to show up, right? But still, you think about it and it's like, how? Then you start to realize,
It's got a
3/4 of these guys
They got
have
a
a payment that I don't,
$1,000 a month boat payment.
Right.
right? And 3/4 of these guys are all stressed out about how they're going to pay the next payment.
Mhm.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
Mhm.
This is all paid for,
Mhm.
right? I bought a boat that I could afford, and I just went fishing. And it didn't matter if I did well or not, but my competitive side made me do well, right?
Mhm.
I wanted to beat everybody. I didn't care who was there. So I
Chad's little skeeter's like a status symbol around here.
I-
Like, when that thing pulls in the landing, like
late.
late, never on time.
Brad, let me ask you this: how many guide trips would you continue to sell if you were about 10 minutes late to everything?
Oh, nowadays they'd be jumping on the socials right away.
Yeah, you'd
My
have a
guy's late.
1-star review in no time.
Chad's Yelp
I wouldn't be
review is
late
gonna
to a
be
guide
0.
trip, though. Let's be real.
I know.
And late is 10 minutes early to a tournament.
No, you do have. It's almost impressive. Like,
It's not changed
Yeah.
over the years. It's the same old.
boats
Everybody's
in the
getting
water.
lining up for blast off, and Chad's pulling in the ramp. Like, yeah,
There's a reason why I do that. Swear to God, all the time.
let's have it.
I don't want to talk to anybody before the tournament. I don't give a crap what everybody thinks.
I could get that.
I don't want to hear what you think you're going to do. I don't want to hear what he thinks he's going to do. I want to go out and do my thing. So I'm going to show up while everybody else is already on the water, done having their powwow in the morning, and I'm going to go have a time.
How do you time that? Do you pull off in a gas station and fill up twice just to make sure that you're, or do you leave the house?
I leave zero room for error
None.
on the travel time.
If
If I have a flat tire, I will be 30 minutes late and be like, I don't know where you are, but I got to come find you to get my boat checked.
whenever we're fishing tournaments together, I'm always like, it's 7 a.m. start. We're 10 miles from home. I'm like, Chad, you better be at my house at like 5:30. And he's like, 5:30? Like, no. I'll be there at 6:40.
I like that, Chad. That's wise. But you know what's nice? Showing up to the boat ramp and getting cussed at by everybody that puts their boat in.
Why?
I don't know, because then I can look them in the eye, and I can be like,
Hey,
I'm gonna move in on your junk. Don't worry about it.
to each their own.
Yeah.
No. I think that's pretty interesting. But all this aside, so we have an industry that it's changing rapidly. I'd say the last 3 years have been off the books, just splashes in your face of this is here, this is good, this is not. If you don't have this, you can't catch fish. It just goes on and on and on. And I really, one of the questions I ask a lot of the pros I've worked with over the years, anglers I respect, is just what is the cure, or what is the ultimate goal as an angler to, if you don't know how to catch a bass, your boat, your electronics, your payment, none of that matters. So the foundation of which you need to establish as soon as you possibly can. Brad, I'm going to turn this to you first. How important on any lake, no matter where you're at in the country, is spending time on the water?
It's very important. You should know your playing field before you get there.
Mhm.
But second of all, that's part of what the live stuff has done is now that can almost take a second seat, because you're not looking you are looking at a map, but you're looking for fish.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that people are starting to figure out. 20 years ago, you had to be on the fish to catch them. You wouldn't spend all day looking for them. Now, when you go fish a tournament or whatever, you're sweeping the floor looking, and you're not throwing a bait until you see something. Before, guys are looking at the map, they're doing all this pre-planning, and a lot of that stuff is out the door now. You can launch. I don't even need to know how deep it is. I just need to know if there's a blob on my screen.
Well, but as a guide, you need to have happy clientele to come back and continue to visit you and recommend you to friends. I mean, you got to be on the fish.
Yeah, you do. And what does help now is when you're shining one, and you can throw at him 5-6 times, and or you start chasing them down. You know what I mean? And they just won't bite, or you keep pushing the fish. That's when you know to move now. Not, they're not biting today. That stuff doesn't work anymore. But your clients, you have to prove to your clients now that you're on fish, that they're not biting, and now you're moving to those active fish. And that's kind of the game now. I do still see a lot of guides out there though that they're not in the front of the boat. They're still kind of doing the old school guide thing, and you can tell.
Fishing a spot because the wind's blowing in there and back trolling into it, and
all that. Yeah, like that's the one thing where you see a guy back trolling nowadays, and you're like,
that was cool in the 80s.
What's he on?
Yeah.
Oh, my 5-year-old.
Is his bow well broken?
That's true. It's true. My 5-year-old.
That's a
we're
fun
out
story.
this
That
summer.
reminds me of something.
He's like, Dad, what's that guy doing?
Kid's never seen anybody go backwards.
No, he's up in the front of the boat helping me shine around. He's like, Dad, what the hell is he doing?
Yeah.
I haven't back trolled since I was in high school.
There are a lot. This is just a
Brandon
quick.
and I got yelled at this year
Oh man.
from somebody.
Here we go. Yeah.
But anyways, go ahead.
No,
Hang on, let's hear it.
yeah, into this.
Yeah.
I mean,
You tell this first.
I don't get very spicy on the water very often.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't realize what happened during the actual event of what was going on. But it was a Thursday nighter. It wasn't anything.
Everybody knew where they were biting.
Yeah. Everybody went to the same spot. Wasn't a secret. And there was already 4 or 5 people on this bank.
This isn't when I cut you off on the docks, was it?
You cut us off. every day. This is
Actually, it was. And then you started back trolling into me. It was weird. No, it wasn't that time. This was,
Carry on.
so everybody was like, there's one boat here, and then 20 yards down the bank, there's another boat, and then 20 yards down the bank, there's another boat. Meanwhile, this boat's yelling at that boat. But anyways, there was a stretch of about 100 yards where there was nobody in between. I'm like, perfect,
pull her in, Chad.
right? The boat on the left is going left, and the boat on the right is going right. So I'm like, oh, perfect. We'll just pull right in the middle, and we'll fish right here. So I did. Pulled right here in the middle, and we just started going. I believe it was south at the time. No big deal. We weren't catching crap, but it was still a good time. And all of a sudden, this boat is like getting closer.
I mean, we
and
were
closer.
there for 2 minutes.
It wasn't very long, and like it just didn't feel right. So we popped across the lake to the other side and didn't think anything of it. Right. Well, end of the tournament, we ended up. I think Brandon, you got a phone call from the tournament director.
Yeah, next day.
Or was it the next
Yeah.
day? And he's like, "You guys cut this guy off. What's the deal?" Like, Brandon, what? I want to say your word right now because it really it irks me. But I'm like, who'd we cut off? What are you talking about? And then we got the story of who it was and this and that. I'm like,
there's no way.
He was pointed south. I was going the same direction as him. Turns out this guy he had his bow mount down, right?
And his vantage.
And his vantage, which you can't tell is down because it looks like they're down all the time.
Is this a competitor that has a vantage?
100%.
Yeah.
That's a lot going on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Bow mount and the vantage. Turns out he was actually going backwards with his vantage towards me. And we cut him off because I went in the middle.
You didn't know he was going that way.
How are you supposed to know?
That's
We're
right.
bass fishing.
Yeah, who back
Right?
trolls bass fishing?
Oh man.
That's a
It was
Right? And then
yeah.
and he has the animosity to go to the tournament director and be like, this boat cut us off. And of course, he doesn't really know me, but he knows Brandon. And he goes, oh, it's not Brandon's fault. It's got to be my fault, right? This and that. So I see him at the next one.
In 20 years, I have never seen that guy in my life get mad at anybody. And he was pissed. Like,
What was this?
I wasn't pissed the day of. I was pissed because he was accusing me of cutting him off when he's going backwards with his vantage.
Was this the event where there was another altercation occurring at the same basic time?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Just
You were
down the
there.
way.
Yeah.
Just down the way.
Well, the reason I asked this is because I know
What night is this going on?
Thursday.
night.
That's a good time.
Yeah, we'll give you the court. Yeah.
it really is, but that wasn't like there was numbers of those that night for some reason. But
Yeah, something was in the air that night.
yeah, everybody was. Well,
I was there.
Brandon was broken at that point, Chad. Like there's a point where I was worried.
I was
about
not
him.
broke at that point. I
No.
watched Chad put on a clinic in the last 10 minutes. I sat in the boat with the net and it was great.
No,
was
your
fun.
your attitude was diminishing at that point.
We're
You
getting
were-
away from that. We're back to the,
I think this is you don't know this, but I brought these guys here to have an intervention.
oh God.
We're going to work on you tonight.
Well,
He got to go deer hunting and shoot some elk and things.
I'm going to get a new boat. That'll help for a little bit.
That should help. Well, okay. So all this combined. So as we have a younger generation coming into the scope of fishing, I remember when I was a junior in high school, the first tournament I fished. So 1998. It was a long time ago. And it was a paper tournament, and I'm sure everybody cheated. I wasn't going to dare cheat, but I mean, on a paper tournament, just add 3 inches and nobody cares. There were not cell phones or cameras or, you just did what you did, but I had a great time, and that inspired me I fished probably, a tournament a year after that for 5 or 6 years, but then it really took off, and I really enjoyed that. And I've learned if I would have had high school bass fishing, or if I would have had college bass fishing to look forward to, I might have done better in school, maybe finished college. That didn't happen. That's another story. But ultimately, I didn't expect it to get to the point that it's at today. And this goes into the boat thing, right? So if you're working your way up to buy a nice boat, to have the kind of rig that's competitive, that gets you from here to there reliably with the kind of electronics that you feel keeps you competitive, that's an important thing, except it should not be out of your ability to pay for it, right? You need to have a plan to work within your means. But everything we've talked about to this point, the youth of our generation, has the precedent been set? We're going to start with you, Brad. That's not necessarily accurate when it comes to getting into fishing. I think a lot of the youth feel like they got to have the best everything to go fishing.
No. I mean, I started similar to where you guys were. My first boat, I kind of built it. I had a piece of plywood I cut out in the front and had basically a piece of pipe that I sat on just to get in the front. But to be competitive, don't worry about the boat. Like, the boat is the last thing you should be.
Yep.
To be competitive is the guy that can find the fish. That is it.
And catch them. Yeah.
And catch them. You gotta, and that's the main thing. Like,
yeah.
some of these guys, you could outfish them from shore. That's the truth. You could walk the bank after a guy's done throwing that bank and catch more if you know what you're doing. And that's the main thing. If guys just got to focus on the fish. Kids look at it and they get too caught up, and they got to have a new boat, and they got to have this, and they got to have all the whatever the new thing is. And what I think the teachers should be doing is saying, whatever you got in the front of that boat, get to know it, get to know how it marks fish, and concentrate on that.
Yeah.
So the precedent that's been set is none of us will deny that. Like, there is a vision of having a great big shiny boat, having a big motor, having all the electronics. Cool, has its place. And I think we'd all agree that it does, to an extent, help you catch fish. But if you don't know where to start, none of it matters.
It does not.
Chad, why don't you take that same question? You teach a lot of kids. You reinvest, and this is one of my favorite things about you. You are not above taking your personal time to talk to the Brainerd High School fishing team or anybody that calls you to share what you know, and you will tell anybody everything. You don't hide anything, which is great. But why do that?
If I tell you something that I did, there's a 99.9% chance that's what I did. Yeah, it's. Reiterate that question again.
Well, it's the perception that you need to be completely outfitted to the hilt to compete today as a youth.
Yeah.
You can get by without a lot of that stuff, is what I'm trying to get at.
I was listening to another podcast here recently, and somebody made a really good point. And to reflect on that, there's a lot of the youth right now that feel like they need all the live scope. They feel like Brad was saying, they need everything, the best of everything in order to be competitive, right? Which maybe there's some truth to that depending on what level you're at. As far as locally, you don't need that. I'll be the first one to admit that in the fall, I rarely use my live scope when I'm bass fishing. It's all about going as fast as you can and catching the fish that are active, right? But something that the youth needs to think about is pretty soon, like there's instinctual parts of fishing that also are combined with the electronics that allow us to make those decisions on the water and where to go when the conditions are right, so on and so forth, whether there's a cloud. I mean, we could go into it all day, but there's this realm of fishermen right now that have the instinctual and electronic savviness to put them both together. And I think I was lucky enough to where I'm just kind of on the cusp where I get to see both. I think Brandon gets to see both. Brad has seen both, right? Where he's doing both to be successful. Pretty soon, because some of these kids now aren't growing up without the electronics, they're losing the whole instinctual aspect of it. They get out there and all they want to do is put it down. They want to put it down and see what's out there, right? And I'm talking about live scope, whatever forward-facing sonar that you're talking about. And without the instinctual aspect, you're losing something. There's a lot of events that you might pull out ahead and you're not necessarily using live scope. Live scope can be a crutch, 100%.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Maybe I should be saying Humminbird Live.
No.
Forward-facing sonar.
Forward-facing sonar.
There you go.
You'd be shocked at on Mille Lacs 99% of the time, you guys would laugh at the guys I see throwing at school of suckers.
Oh yeah,
well, I believe that.
And I'll go and you'll see them because they don't
Chasing
move
them around.
and they're moving around and I'll tell my customer like, yeah, dude,
they're not going to get one.
Dude's catching suckers.
he's pro fishing suckers right now.
So I mean, if this is a message for the youth, I would say, don't worry about the electronics. Don't worry about that stuff.
Go fish.
That instinctual, just knowing what to do on the water during the right time is so important, and in my opinion, above live scope for certain species.
To me, it like augments live scope or forward-facing sonar. If you have the foundation, you're going to be better with it.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
but I've been guilty of this where you're like, I'm not seeing anything, and you're spinning out, and you're like, I've wasted my time. It's just not going to come together the way. And then you're off doing something else, and you've wasted half your day. But the reliance, I'll compare this to trail cameras. So we're going to switch it to you too, Brandon. Trail cameras tell you part of the story. Same with forward-facing sonar.
That's part of it. Yeah,
that's part of it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of guys that are very dependent on what they're seeing on their cameras, and they think that the more cameras they have, the more information they're going to gather, that they're going to be able to make good decisions to be in the right spot when that buck steps out. The exact same thing applies in my mind to forward-facing sonar.
It does. Yeah, and you learn lessons just like Chad said out there. I mean, prime example was last fall. I mean, I got yelled at by my buddy over here, but
I don't remember this. Oh, I do remember
You
this.
should yell more.
We were,
you know,
we both made the executive decision. You know, it's a fall October tournament. We're gonna go out here. We're gonna catch a bunch of these great big largemouths, and we fished for what, 5 hours? I think he caught one. And
terrible.
We ran a half an hour and get to where we're gonna fish, and like my initial knee-jerk reaction when I got there was to turn on the live scope, and it's a wall of milfoil, you know, and I'm like, I want to get a spinning rod and a freaking jig worm, and I want to like see what's swimming around. And Chad's like, shut it off and throw your jig up in there, you know. And I was like, yeah, you're right, you know. And for me, it was like, okay. I mean, I could have fished down the whole thing if I'd have been by myself. And I mean, we went up and down that thing and caught piles of them, but it was just, that's like he said, you kind of get in that rut, like where it's, and you forget about everything that you've learned over the years. You just want to turn it on and see what's out there.
And you know what? I'm not above that now, where I've been through the gamut of lining up, the striped boat lift with the willow tree and trying to get on the edge where, that's how I learned to fish a spot.
Me too.
But it's real easy for that crap to get in your head. And I feel like it's almost, I'll say it, it's almost like a disease that's perpetuated itself all the way up to the top ranks of fishing.
It's like a cell phone.
They feel
Really
like
fast.
they cannot function if they don't have it.
Yeah.
And so this whole thing, I'm going to wrap this nicely up with a bow for you guys, because this is where I don't know that I've done perfectly with my son, but I think I've helped him understand that it's a tool, not necessarily the key to success, right? To where if you guys don't have the foundation baked in before you ever put forward-facing sonar on your boat that you paid $100,000 for, that you've worked 20 years to afford, whatever your case may be, you need to have a basic understanding of fish, a basic understanding of presentations, a basic understanding of daily and seasonal movements. And if you don't have that, then all that other stuff doesn't mean shit.
Does not.
So I almost think, in my advice, if you're a young angler looking to get into the bass fishing scene, is to purposely leave that crap off your boat as long as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like that parent that says you can't have a cell phone until you're 16.
Yep.
And they don't
good.
veer from it.
Yep.
If there's a parent that says, I'll get you a boat and it's going to be $2,000 and you can't put a live scope on it
Or give them
until you're 16,
Yeah.
you can't even put
You're
a
going to
map
get a
on it.
map in 2D.
Yeah.
That's even more than I would get.
Yeah.
You're going to go fishing wild rice and you're going to go have a time. Figure it out. Sorry.
You think of handing a kid now that where you take away his tablet or something.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You get 2D in a Lake Master chip.
Yeah.
Oh, Dad.
Jeez, Dad. That's
How long am I
Tommy-
grounded for?
Tommy's got a new live scope.
Yeah, Tommy's out there staring at it too. Has no idea what else is going on. If it's a smallmouth,
Not your Tommy. We're
No,
just using
Whatever,
Tommy.
that's fine.
Tommy is a generic name.
Yeah,
but it doesn't
that's
have to be
fine.
Tommy.
Very generic.
True, but the reality
Sorry,
is,
Tommy.
yeah, he doesn't even know. He's like, hey, can I hang out tonight? I'm like, yeah, if you want to sit around tonight, you're welcome to that. But he's like, I think I'm gonna go home and get the fish house ready.
Oh,
But
boy.
that's what I'm getting at with this is the fishing industry has changed and almost set an expectation that as veteran anglers, we're excited about what's coming. There's some cool stuff coming. We're looking at a neat year. We've got come on, Thomas, think of the words here, like buyer enthusiasm. Everybody's ready to get back into the game. I think that if November would have been different, early November would have been different. There may have been a different perspective on how much money we're going to spend on the boat or whatever, but we have positive future. We've got something to look forward to that we can be optimistic about. And I still think that if your kid or if you're looking to getting into fishing, digging into that entire building your foundation is going to be the most important start. Cool boat. There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
It's just, you got to get to that level.
Cool boat without electronics.
How many
foundation.
cool boat guys have we seen come and go in the area over the years? Like
A lot.
I mean, I can think of a ton of them. Like they show up, they got a 10-year-old bass boat and they fish for a year. And then the next year they got a brand new one.
Yeah.
They got all the stuff. They go out for a year or two, get their butt kicked.
Wasn't Thomas's first year this year?
Tom had a cool new boat.
He bought a new one, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I think he'll be around for a few years.
there's those guys like they just have to have the coolest thing, and it doesn't mean they're going to catch a bass or a walleye or whatever it might be.
Well,
I'm not gonna lie though. I fish out of my 2012 18-foot Skeeter with a 150 Yamaha that's got 4,000 hours on it. I really don't know how many it is, but it's a bunch, and it still runs great. But would I mind if my pocketbook said that I could buy one without a payment? Would I mind having a brand new one? Absolutely not. There's nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
But is it something that I can just go write a check for? No, it's not. So I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Someday I can. I will. I'm not saying if you can't afford it, don't buy it. Buy it.
well, they do have their benefits. I mean, they're fast, they're fun, especially if you're skipping off the tops of waves, going too fast.
I see your kid having fun in yours every single night you're not there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Driving it like he stole it. Big grin on his face, like, and he's like, "Don't tell Dad."
Well, you know, I'll be honest. One of the things that my son has learned early is he's still scared of things.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, he's definitely like, I've let him take, and this is not every parent should do this, but I have let my son take my new boat out by himself, and I know that he's going to drive
I
it
saw
carefully.
him out by himself, him and his buddies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they were
Wow.
having a time.
Yeah.
I did the same thing.
Well, but he still respects it enough to not be stupid with it. And that's, I think, pretty important. And I have kind of created the own example for myself where I hope that my kids can do better for themselves than I did, because I did a lot of stupid stuff, and having something fast at that age was not good for me. So at least they're doing better than I am. So that's basically that conversation starter here, is that we have a good thing going in high school fishing, college fishing, a lot of opportunity for young kids to travel the country, fish neat fisheries, see parts of the different lakes that are, we're pretty blessed here in Minnesota, but if you go south, like, the fishing pressure is through the roof. It's tough to do well in bass tournaments. You can speak to this, I'm sure. That culture has been down there for so long. Right, but fishing pressure still mounts up here. We've got a shorter season. You got to be wise when you go, but if you can get on the water, a pressured lake, and do well when everyone else is on it, then I think you've got something going. But you got to have something on your boat to tell you where you're going. If there's one piece of equipment that's super important to safety, mapping, would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good start. 2D, I learned I didn't learn on my own, but a lot of the pros were using 2D sonar off of their trolling motor to scope up fish.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
That was a big thing.
It
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
It was the only thing they had.
Yep.
Ice fishing. Mark.
Sit on
was doing
top
the
of a
same
rock and yeah.
thing. Put your deucer on your scoop and you turn it around. Like 20 minutes, you're like, there they are. I know it was dirty, but it
Yeah.
worked.
So have you ever turned a 2D sonar sideways?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We'd put it on an ice scoop and you'd stick it below the ice and you'd point and you go, there they are. And that was a big hush thing.
Forward facing
Yeah, it was
with the
forward facing.
Vexilar.
Yeah, with
Forward
the
facing.
Vexilar. You're right. It worked. It only worked till about.
Boy, they missed the boat there.
You'd think if they could have done that, if they would have
geez.
just put that thing on a ram mount,
Put it on an ice scoop.
they'd still be selling them.
That's pretty interesting.
Because I bet you can shoot a long way.
You can. The other thing we do is you put it in there and you just swing it back and forth.
This is a secret that people are going to start using.
Well, it's on video. I did one 10 years ago. I'm like,
Yeah.
get your deucer in there, and on thin ice, you can swing it back and forth. If you see a blip, go over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I got a little off track.
No, the
Tricks
No,
of the
that's
trade.
That's a good one. I've honestly never heard of that in all my.
So a flasher,
This
your
is fantastic.
standard old school off the map technology,
Go-
still has modern application.
Go to Fleet Farm, go buy one at a garage sale.
FL8.
Yeah, just go do it and it'll work.
Tape it to an ice scoop on the bottom.
Yeah.
Perpendicular to the ice scoop.
How
Yeah.
about that?
Let
So
it rip.
you'd literally just turn it around like that. When you say swing it, what's that mean?
So you're bopping around, and
Mhm.
most of the guys would just check underneath you, right? Well, who wants to check underneath you when you swing it? I found it out by accident. You swung it in there, the thing kind of went, and I was like, "What was that?" Mark? And
Yeah.
I did it again. I'm like,
There's some right over there.
"What the hell was that?" So you went over there, and boop,
They're there.
they're there.
Well, of course, geometrically speaking, you lose that angle as the ice gets thicker.
Yeah.
How long could you make that work?
The heavier your deucer, the better it worked. So you wanted a dual beam, was what I found out. I love that you're bringing this up.
This is good.
Guys
Fantastic.
would be like, "Why are you?" And if you used a narrow beam, heavy transducer, and you could swing that sucker, and that would be your best way of reading fish. But yeah, so about 6-7 inches of ice, and then you were done with it.
Is that when you taped it down to the ice scoop?
That's when you start using the ice scoop.
What
There's
kind of
always
ice scoop?
innovation here.
You
What's
know
the best ice scoop for that?
hockey stick? You know the hockey
Yeah.
stick one?
Yeah.
One?
Okay.
that's the one.
Yeah, you could go about 3 feet.
How about that? All right, so let's open this up a little bit here. So, everybody said, like, the reason I'm going to use a Vexilar over 2D sonar or use the standard flashers because it's immediate, it's fast, right? So if you're swinging that thing, does that transducer, does it pause and then the water pressure, it just kind of slowly comes back? Like,
Yeah, just think of yourself on a swing. You know what I mean? You got that little bit of pause
Yeah.
when you get up there, and it's not the most accurate thing, but at least you get direction.
get a place to go.
And the main thing is, ice fishing, if you break it down, you got to drill holes. You can't drive over there.
Mhm.
That kind of sucks. So the less time you spend drilling is the more time you spend fishing.
Okay.
Write that down.
Well, but let's think about this for a minute. Like
We've already thought about it. Now they have live scope poles. You put it in there and you just.
That's right, but we're not out of the woods yet on government oversight with forward-facing sonar.
Oh, we're not?
Well, let me tell you something.
I have another question about that later, but we'll get to that. This is not even live scope, but government stuff.
Okay. Well, I don't know, but
I know. I just I want to bring something up.
all right, we'll get to that. So,
One of my questions that you made us think about.
okay, well, chill out, eat the other half of your burrito, whatever it is.
I put that on hold.
So, there are a couple states that have outlawed trail cameras for any type of hunting. That's a lesser technology than forward-facing sonar if you want to get down to the pieces and the, whatever it does. So, we're not far away. We've seen it where it's been introduced. Wisconsin tried, at least was introduced to have it banned, if not fully, at least on some lakes. This last winter, they had it might have been spring, they had like a town hall tour where head biologists and some representatives went to different towns. I think they had a dozen or a few less than that, and asked the community to give their input on forward-facing sonar. Now, that bothers me a little bit because if you have the people that are, the have-nots that don't want to use the technology, they refuse to even try it, but they want it banned or outlawed, I don't necessarily want that person making the decision for me. But let's pretend for a minute that it does happen, right? Let's say Minnesota, I would think, of all the states in the country, is one of the best fishing destinations that you have inside the U.S. borders. That would lead me to assume Minnesota might be one of the early states to ban it, if not totally, partially. Not saying it's going to happen, okay? Let me be clear. If it does, this kind of conversation is what I'm talking about, where innovation is going to take over, where people are going to get creative and they're going to get the hockey stick scoop, tape it on the handle or however the heck you did it, and figure out a way to make that work. So if you take that technology away, I kind of feel like, to an extent, they're going to find a better way to do what was working before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the whole conversation, when they start bringing it into town halls and thing, I mean, it just kind of mirrors a bad episode of South Park. Really.
Or it's worthy of an episode of South Park.
Robble.
Yeah.
You can't use it.
Yeah.
Let the fish numbers tell you.
You got to,
Science.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't like science nowadays, as we know. We don't have to go down this road. It's
That's
just
fair.
about what makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Whatever. We're not going there. You had a question. Let's get to it.
You ready to get there now?
Yeah, we can shift gears.
Well, this is a hard shift, right?
Let's do it. Here, we're almost an hour in, and we've been on one topic, really. So let's shift hard.
All right. State of the industry right now really is big time on the electronics aspect, right?
Mhm.
In my eyes, like, we got to have water in order to implement those electronics. Government agencies love taking things away from us. Not government agencies, but also big private dollars. Whether they buy all the land around a lake, government agencies taking away accesses, right? Where's this at in 100 years? How many lakes do we actually have access to? There's a ramp on the Mississippi River.
Shut her down.
She's done.
Yeah.
It's next to my house. I can't use it anymore. It's been 4 years now.
Is that the
Half Moon.
Half Moon. And that's just the beginning of it. That's just what.
why is it not available?
But that
anymore?
was a private deal.
It is. Well, if you look, the ramp is on public land.
There's a dispute just like this out west, where we're at, where the landowners we'll just use the OnX line was actually accurate, whereas the GIS line was not far enough. So this guy was able to set up blockades at a boat ramp.
Yeah, this
on
guy
a popular lake.
owns private land, right? That you got to get through.
Were you on the Mississippi again?
Yeah, and he got sick and tired of picking up shit on his land all the time, and people partying and leaving a mess, and he pulled the plug. And
Yep.
Not to say you or I or Brad would have done the same thing. I mean, at some point, it's like you got a bunch of these assholes that don't respect the resource, and then you
give a bad name to everybody.
Yeah, and then it's guys like us that access is 3 miles from your house.
Yeah.
I mean, now you can't go put your boat in there.
No, because you could put in there and literally put your trolling motor down and start catching fish.
Yeah.
Right now you have to go to Lum Park or wherever else.
Yeah, you got a 30-mile boat ride.
Yeah. Way farther.
Yeah.
Big deal. there's still an access on the river, but it's on the other side. You have to go through Trommold and Crosby, and it's the Trommold access, right? It's a long ways. It's
So
40 minutes away.
You realize, though, that a lot of these accesses that were created for rivers, for lakes, for everything that we have across the country was through eminent domain. And that's a whole nother topic that I think is red-blooded Americans. We don't want to dig into that, right? You know, there's some sketchy stuff that went on to access that land. And if this man actually owned that property, you know, as a free tax-paying citizen, we don't want to be put into jeopardy where our land gets consumed by the government as well. So it inconveniences you. Who's in the right?
This goes down to another topic.
Let's have it. Yeah.
Right? Brandon, Brad, you, me, we all love the sport of fishing so much that we don't want to invest time in the politics side of it to actually get together and create a movement, making sure that we have these public waters in 100 years. Because if we have free time, let's be real, we all work, right? Brad's busy on the water all the time. I'm pounding nails. He's selling stuff. You're writing columns, right? We're busy. Okay. But that doesn't leave us a lot of time to deal with the politics side of things and make sure that these ramps are open in 100 years.
It's a trickle-down effect. The working man doesn't have time to do that. So that's why everything gets done that gets done.
Well, that's not just fishing. It's across the board.
That's what I mean. It doesn't matter if it's fishing or it's hunting or it's politics in general. Like, we don't, as much as I want to be on the Brainerd school board and this and that and everything else, like,
what time you got?
Yeah. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day.
And then you have a family. You got to pick and choose, right?
Well, then comes the other thing about the money that they're going to want to dump into a resource to maintain it. Let's talk about Mille Lacs. There's a ramp there they're redoing as we speak, right? They're planning to do it in Garrison.
Yeah, Garrison.
So they're dumping a ton of money into that.
Last I heard is like 1.8.
It's a pile.
Into the ramp.
Is that state money?
That's aggressive.
That's super aggressive.
Is that state? Is that like
That's state money? And and they upped it.
Yeah.
I think it was one.
There's a reason why Minnesota's really expensive to live in.
Oh, for sure.
And you still might lose your catalytic converter over there.
Not
there.
I've lost 3.
Like, they know your truck.
Someone should give me an award. I've been.
What does your truck sound like when you started?
I can tell you this. This is super funny. This is super funny. So one of my guide, dude that we do trips together sometime. He's telling me about how many did you get? You know, that guide thing after the day. And I'm like, I got 14, man. It was pretty rough. He's like, yeah, man, I couldn't shine on the right ones, whatever his bullshit was that day. So I'm like, yeah, and I hit the button on my truck. And he jumped like 4 feet in the air, and it just sounded off of the truck next to me. I mean, you couldn't even hear yourself think.
How did it even start? That's the
they run without them.
Yeah. The straight pipe.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Sounds like your truck.
Back in the 80s, they tried to do that. It was on purpose. Nobody cared.
I just put playing cards in the spokes to get that sound. I mean, it's not like I had to pull that off, but but that really is an example, though. If they're going to put this kind of money into that ramp, you would kind of hope that there's some level of security that's encompassed in that budget, right? Lights are good, but how about some security cameras to eliminate losing 3 catalytic converters?
In all fairness, that access that we're talking about, that access back in the day was beautiful. There was a little log cabin at the top there.
It was.
Center. Yeah. There was a road around it where you could do. It was more than just an access. It was a scenic overlook. It was an information center. It was a historical landmark, and somehow the state of Minnesota just let that deteriorate to the point where they just started putting blockades up. It was sad.
Yeah.
We used to go there as kids. My great grandma Lucy just lived a half mile from there. We used to go and watch the ice pile up. And I think that the state of Minnesota is finally getting it, that maybe not putting it into it, but maybe they should have never let it go.
Right. Mm-hmm. Just maintain it.
Yeah.
That's all you got to do. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we used to have I'm talking like young teenager. We had like a walleye camp. My uncles would come from North Dakota. We had a 25-foot hunting shack. We literally pulled it over, parked it just outside of Garrison on the side of the road, and we walleye fished for a week. It was a family, like, it was great. we used that ramp he's talking about, and it was like Mille Lacs was special back then. Like it was like sacred, like, oh, we're going to Mille Lacs, you know, and now it's like you can't talk about it without politics or this or that, or, you know, it's
still a phenomenal fishery.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
It's great. And it's I think it's coming around. I think it's definitely bottomed out, and it's, you know,
Leveled.
yeah.
No.
But you drive by there now, like you go down 169, you look out there, and there's boats, and there's people fishing, and
a lot
there's
of bass boats.
Oh yeah.
A lot of bass boats.
But I remember when I was a kid, like you'd go there and it was the walleye limit was 6, like it was everywhere else, and we'd go up my dad's Rebel Lund, and we'd go troll spinners, and we'd catch our 12 walleyes, and like you talk about it for a year. It was the greatest thing ever. But hopefully we can get back to that.
Well, I think that we can, and you know, Chad, government oversight to an extent has its benefit.
I would
right?
agree. I'm not saying that government is all bad.
Right, but there's
Right.
a lot of trouble that comes with it, and I think Mille Lacs is a fine example of the trouble that comes with it. But elaborate a little bit more. You want to make sure that our future generations have the opportunity. And 100 years is a good benchmark. We ain't going to see that.
Nope.
But let's talk about 20 years from now. Like if we look at the fisheries that we have available in the Brainerd Lakes region, just across the state of Minnesota in general, you know, it has to be managed. So if you're going to if you could implement one type of regulation or statute, is access to the water going to be that statute that assures future generations enjoy the water, or stocking programs to augment the put and take type fisheries? Mille Lacs is a fine example that needs to have some level of augmentation, I think. But what would you do? Pick one thing that you would do to make sure the next 20 years has an opportunity to enjoy the resource.
Yeah.
That is a tough one.
Yeah, it is.
I think number one is access, though. Fisheries are resilient. We say we fish out fisheries in the wintertime, this and that, but they're not fished out. There's just a smaller population there used to be, and it doesn't take them long to come back.
Mhm.
Right? In 5-6 years, they're back.
Yeah.
But if
people
you don't
just
have that
go
back-
there.
Yeah, exactly. They stop going there, so the fish come back relatively quick, right? It's those winter cycles. But I think without access, it doesn't matter, right? I mean, there's a decent amount of private lakes in this state that we don't have access to unless you know somebody.
Is that a good thing?
Yeah, I think it is.
So
Right?
some of them should
But-
stay private.
No, I agree. I think there's a good balance.
Mhm.
Okay. But it's a lot of these lakes that we currently have access to now, for example, upper reaches of the Mississippi from the Merrifield side, or the Cross Lake side, Merrifield side, over in that area. There's not, I take that back. The DNR tried to put in a landing on that side. It's in, it's up the river a ways. It's just south of Rabbit Lake. I don't remember the bay, but it is a terrible landing. It is covered with wild rice. You can't use it in the summertime. You can use it in the spring when the vegetation's not up and the water's high. After that, you can't use it. So
what would you do to that access? Would you force that man to forfeit a portion of his property to allow access? You're not going to hurt anybody by speaking the truth here, but is that what needs to happen there?
No, I don't think so. I think when that access was created, the proper path to keep that access open wasn't taken. Was there a legal easement that was actually created through that property when they built that access, or did the DNR own that property at that point in time? Was like, hey, we'll just build it through here. The corner goes over the property line and then comes back over the property line
It's
back
got
to
enough
state line,
money.
right?
They should have, I mean,
Yeah, just
make
I was like,
make them an offer. We need to buy this chunk of land, or we need to. There's always a way around something.
or before they sold it, we need to create a legal 33-foot easement through this property so that this access
In a
does not get
covenant
shut
that's
down.
enforceable by law.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the problem is, it sounds simple to just go, oh, why don't they just recut it through the road? Well, because now they actually veered on that other property because of the wetland, right? It's all wetland through there, so they had to go around the property line.
That's another problem.
Correct. So it's the only way you're going to do it is if you build some crazy bridge, but that's not going to happen, right? Unless you take some of the garrison money and put it over there.
Hey,
Brad likes that.
I want to
money.
know Brad's answer to the question.
So the same thing.
Oh,
what would be
man.
one thing you would do? And maybe we put it in the terms of Mille Lacs, because we know there has been a disconnect from the DNR and their survey data from the reality of the walleye population in Mille Lacs. What would you do to Mille Lacs?
As far as an access standpoint or population,
What would you do
If you could change
do
one
thing
regulation.
to fix Mille Lacs?
what I would do is get away from the co-management. That's what I would get away from, is either create an authority that governs the whole thing.
The entire lake.
Like
There you go.
here's
The Mille Lacs Authority.
Yeah, whatever it is,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Because here, I gotta almost take the gloves off.
Do it.
I'm super sick and tired of a co-management philosophy, because at one time, everyone here is descendant from some type of someone that, or whatever. I'll say
Somewhere
my
down the
descendants
road.
were slaves. Okay, I know that's hard to look at, but yeah, my descendants were slaves. We got beat up on, right? And we all have to come together here and realize that we can't have 2 or 3 different separate management entities enforcing the laws that we all have to abide by.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that kind of leads down to conversations that aren't so healthy, but the longer we stay in the system we're in right now, the further down that nasty thing, we just keep on repeating ourselves.
Yeah, the rabbit hole's getting deep.
Yeah, like let's get out of it. Let's get under this and start managing things correctly under one system, not 2 or 3. Sorry.
No,
There's a place in the state where that happens.
I know.
But see, that lake in particular, and I know there's a couple others in this state that are co-managed that way, that have problems pending, right? We're not to the point yet, but we're dealing with that. Maybe that's a conversation for a later day. But, you really need to think about future generations enjoying the resource, right? And I think that it comes down to how can you work together with these other entities that have an interest in the biological system as a whole. And if there's been an awful lot of this. There's been a lot of, I'm not listening to this group because of that, and I'm not listening to that group because of this. So, screw them. Their opinion doesn't matter to me. But really, those separations ultimately will lead to the demise of the fishery that's world famous as being one of the top walleye destinations in the world.
Yep.
So let's come together. Let's have a conversation. Let's put all the shit that's under the bridge that's long gone for 100 years, and let's work on working for tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where, when people talk about land, this is where things get fracked and broken. Is we talk about this land access, but really we're still talking about the one thing. We're talking about the fish. We're talking about the access to the water.
Yep.
Now, where I feel people start crossing these lines is they say, well, we control the access, we control the fish. No, dude, you don't. That is for everyone. And now you're using that as a caveat to try to control it. And I think that's half the problem, is saying, no, that's not the way we're going to do business anymore.
That's what it is a business. And that's the sad reality of it is. It's how can you go from, and I've said this before, how can you go from me being 12 years old and going over there with my family, and the limit is 6, and people are catching walleyes like it's going out of style, and the lake is, it cycles, and the perch cycle and the baitfish cycles. You're gonna have up years, you're gonna have down years, blah blah blah. But this freaking racket, I don't know how you deal with it. It's on this date you can keep a 20 to 22 incher, but tomorrow the limit goes to 0. But then on this date it's like, come on.
And they kick you off the lake.
You got to be off at 10 o'clock, or you got.
Oh, you have to have thick skin. Trust me.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of the guys get flushed out. I mean, even myself, man. There was during the shutdown years, I went up to Upper Red.
Yeah.
My phone, I had a booked season. We always have booked seasons, and overnight lost everything. But what do? I got a family.
Yeah, you gotta eat.
I can't go I could go do something else. At this point in my life, I'd really suck at anything else I went and did. I'm like,
yeah, you're gonna groove.
Yeah, I'm kind of terrible at a lot of things nowadays, so my options were pack up camp.
That's what it's like to be Thomas.
And go to Upper Red, and that's what I did. I got 2 phone calls that winter for people that wanted to go to Mille Lacs. That was it. So, sorry, Thomas.
No, that's fine. Listen, I'll take the
This is why you bring Brandon.
It is. He keeps me honest.
You enjoy that.
He does.
I do kind of to a small extent. His rude comments, or anyway. I don't know the right path forward. I think I could estimate some things, but I mentioned the eminent domain thing. Like that's not the right answer. I think there's a collective, what can we do to mutually benefit from this? And maybe that's, you offer the guy the amount of money that it would take to buy that easement, right? And or you pay him for a covenant that is 100 years or whatever the deal is. You need to allow their opinion to come into play. And if people are unwilling to communicate, in this case of the guy that owns that land by your boat ramp, I don't think the iron fist way is how you get it done.
No, you don't.
No, absolutely not.
You have to have
You go there with the
mutual
sugar and you try and see what bites, and it just, I don't know.
Killing people with kindness.
The
goes
problem
along.
is that access is probably not, I mean, yeah, you and I use it, and there's a handful of local guys that love it, and it's not a Zorba's Gull Lake access or a Garrison access or
And there's a lot of people that go down that access at dark
to do things they shouldn't do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the truth be told, every access is that way. I've been to
100%.
what's the one that's just north of Lum Park? Have you been down there for the drug deals?
Oh,
They're often.
for sure.
So I kind of feel like it may be, as you said this, the access convenience for you guys is important, but maybe it's a lesser problem for the DNR.
Yep, it is.
It is.
Yep.
I mean, and do I get by going around? Of course.
That's a long drive.
Yeah, it is.
We're spoiled in Minnesota.
But if you want to go there, you're going to go there. Just what it is.
But I mean, think of this: if this was happening, if you only had 10 lakes in your state,
Yeah.
this would be
That's where I was.
a hell of a lot bigger of a deal.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
we come from this. We live in this house of hundreds of thousands. We got
What lake you want to go to today?
Yeah.
we could lose 5,000 lakes and half the people wouldn't even know.
Yeah.
Right.
You take 5 lakes out of Oklahoma,
Yeah.
They have
People-
one left.
Yeah.
screaming.
Yeah.
Well, but see,
Yeah.
that whole process, if you go back and read about some of the early Tennessee Valley Authority days, I mean, you want to talk about a dark period. Like, land was, for lack of a better term, taken from people
100% it was.
to create these fisheries, to create these impoundments to manage the water. They were not created for
They weren't
anglers to
fisheries.
fish. You're right.
Exactly.
I misspoke.
They
big
weren't
time.
fisheries.
Yeah.
But truth be told, to save a lot of people through flood management, dams, river management, etc., they had to take the land from these people that originally owned those places. And that's there's a book out there called Rising Tide, which talks about the establishment of the control along the Mississippi River. And if you want to look at a dark period of our existence as Americans, that is an amazing book. I would recommend it across the board. One of my favorite like historical nonfiction pieces of work that really indicate what it took to take control of these fisheries. Now, Minnesota would be a very, very small version of that if you want to talk about claiming the land that this man apparently thinks is his, whatever the deal is. Like, it does not come without tears. It does not come without authority. And I think that in my mind, it's up to us to make sure that the government stays true to their initial cause, to their goals of managing walleye populations on Mille Lacs, managing a walleye population across the board in the state. There are statewide limits, right? But individual lakes are susceptible to biologist input to whatever the heck they did on Mille Lacs, which is garbage. There was some insight there, and it's cost guys like you that live there, some income.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it does come down to the government needs to listen to authoritative folks or people that have insight that's valuable. And we haven't breached the wolf topic in this room because it's largely a
that's where we're
fishing.
going. I could tell you.
But you know what I'm going to say is that every angle, every vested interest is going to have their propaganda level, right? So if you're the DNR, you're going to send Tim Waltz out on the lake, and there's plenty of walleyes down
Would
here.
you rather have his opinion or Brad Hawthorne's opinion as far as
don't
what's
be
going on
good.
in the lake?
I don't. You just put me in the category with Tim. So.
No, it's a different category.
No, the
But that's what they
opposite
do.
choice of him. But
Yeah.
you're right. That's 100% the case. Is you have to look at. You got to. We've done this thing politically where you look up, you see the funnel from the bottom, right? You got your school boards, you have your representatives for regions of the state that represent you at the state level, and then you've got the national representation. What happens is your voice gets less important.
Yeah,
the
they can't hear
further
it
up
at
the
the top.
funnel you go.
They can't hear it at the top.
That's right. So I think that you need to find a way to have the conversations at the local level. I think that access is important. It's not just you that's missing out. It's not just you. There's
Yep.
other people that are missing
There's
out on
duck
that
hunters. There's you name it. There's
a
of
lot
people.
more people than the two guys talking in this room that have been affected by that. But we also need to think about what it's like to be in that guy's shoes that owns the land. He's tired of picking up the shit that's left over at the ramp, the beer cans, condom wrappers,
Yep.
whatever you find there.
Yep.
He's tired of that. He doesn't want the riffraff. Can you blame him for that?
I
No,
don't.
not even a little bit.
Right. So
I know exactly why he did it. You know,
As a landowner, absolutely, I wouldn't blame him for it.
Right.
I'd be like, sorry.
mhm. There comes a point though where if you want to have some level of authority to right that situation, you got to involve the government. And I think we need that to an extent, but limited. You know,
Yeah, you need,
there's a fine line.
you
There
need to
is.
have a guy that could go around and talk to Joe Smith, who owns that land, and be like, hey, Joe, we'd like to keep the access open. What's it going to take? And have a civil conversation
but
about
got to have a checkbook right then and there.
100% you do.
Yep.
Yep.
Or something else.
But,
Everything moves
but
on.
the state has a pretty big checkbook. You know, I
It
mean,
does.
It's really
at
big.
at the end of the day, it's
All right. Okay. I'm going to turn this around on you just a little bit. Let's pretend for a second that fishery is world class, and we know that it's pretty awesome. The better access that they have, the more pressure that fishery gets, the more information gets out in that fishery might start to decline.
I think you got to keep it simple. Water access is water access, period. Once that's where this gets fracked.
yep.
Is people start, you start spider webbing this thing, and the thing is, it's access, and that doesn't matter if you're down there licking rocks and putting them in your pocket, or out there.
Yeah.
It's serious. It
100%.
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah, you nailed it.
I mean, it's water access for your hunters, for your rock lickers,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. That's what it is.
You want to go out and harvest rice, or you
I
want
like
to shoot a
agates,
duck,
just
or
to
you,
let you know.
You lick rocks?
you like
Every
What
once
does
in a
that
while, yeah.
mean?
Oh, dude.
Shining
Is
them
that
up,
like a
man.
window licker?
So I actually,
you got to see what you got.
I called
different.
the sheriff
Give it a
on
lick.
guy the first time I saw it. I ain't kidding you. I was at the
Jeez.
Only way I know this is
Where did this go?
my parents are rock lickers, and of course I learned it from my parents. So sorry, Brad.
no, I'm not saying it dry.
I'm not saying I go. If you see me licking rocks at the land and I'm ready to go fishing,
Don't call the police. So it was North Harrison Ave.
I'm not going to take your kind of life bringer.
I'm like, what the hell is this guy doing? I'm looking down the shore. I'm waiting for my clients. And he keeps putting shit in his mouth. And I'm like, what is he doing? So I call the sheriff. And I'm like, hey man, I don't know. I'm like, there's no car at the access, and this dude, I don't know if he's putting snails and or whatever he's doing, but he's eating shit off the shoreline, and he ain't cooking it. So the sheriff's like, or the dispatcher goes, we're gonna have a guy call you. So
Oh,
sheriff comes out, and he's like, oh yeah, it's an agate. He's picking agates, and I feel like an idiot. I'm like, oh, he's picking agates. Why is he licking them? He goes, well, that's all he tells us is an agate. I'm like, what?
What?
Like that's,
Oh yeah, it's a real thing.
oh yeah. Like, so imagine there's an agate. It's a little,
Yeah, I know what it is. There's like a collection of them around Mille Lacs. It's
probably
actually
like sticking a battery in your
A lot of rock lickers
Get a-
though are tweakers.
get a
Like
little-
it's when they're
yeah.
tweaking hard,
They're
they're looking for
around.
rocks,
Yep.
right? But then there's other rock lickers.
Wow, we got into agate picking.
Yeah.
I love it.
you guys know Josh Douglas, right?
He's a rock licker.
He is a big Josh. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. in
I'm on the
advance for this.
smallmouth alliance with Josh. That was not me.
He's a
Okay, but I wonder.
You might not be tweaking at the same time.
I guarantee it. He's too tired for all the things he does. But that okay. So you want to have access to pick agates, like
Yeah.
that's lake access. It's not just us. It's not just the anglers that want this access. It's the resource that's ours that we are entitled to have access to.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what it is you're doing.
Yeah, it could be the degenerates in the kayak.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, why would you want to do that?
I kind of feel like that was a jab.
I was.
100%.
So this is coming to you next, Brandon. We've asked them one thing that you would change, whether it's political or access
To
oriented.
prolong the
Yeah, so that
resource.
so that your daughter can enjoy it.
Man, I've been thinking about that since we brought it up, and that's a loaded question, but my gut tells me limits.
Yeah.
That's where my gut goes. You know,
that was my thing.
the you know, the crappie limit over the years, it dropping, great. I love it. Should be 5 everywhere in my opinion. Bluegills, same. Walleyes, 4. You know, pike. You know, this state. I mean, even when I was growing up, there was some nice pike around here. Now it's like, where are they?
Yeah, they're all
you know,
20 inches. Yeah.
Yeah, and they all got iron in their back in the middle of the winter. You know, it's like, to me, there could be a better system for that, and it doesn't have to be lake specific. I know there's certain lakes that, yeah, we need to protect these here and these there, and that does work, obviously, but I think as far as protecting the resource for 20, 50, 100 years, I think that's it. But I don't know. I mean, you have these habitual offenders that
The bucket brigade.
I know several of them. I mean, there's just these guys, local guys that, like, when the crappies are biting, it's a disease, and they have to get a limit every day, and they got to go out, and, you know, they're piled up in the basin in the fall, and they take weeks off of work, and it's like God, they just got to have it, you know, and I don't get it, but it's a real thing, you know, and obviously that's where you hope your game wardens come into play, and they can, you know, right that wrong. But I don't know.
Is there any value to increasing stocking in the state
Boy,
for the put and take species?
I'm not
That's a lake specific.
I'm not a biologist, but some lakes are, I would totally agree. I mean, Mille Lacs, I don't know.
But would it be a risky business because of the amount of natural reproduction in the fertile lakes that we have? They're so productive.
Boy, I don't know. I mean, that's over my head.
It is over mine too. But
I have an opinion on it, of course, but
what's your opinion?
no, I think some of the small lakes that they try and stock, I don't know that. I think it's pretty futile, in my opinion. You see, I mean, I know there's several lakes around Brainerd that over the years the DNR stocked walleyes in it, and yeah, you might catch one here or there, and usually it's a rail skinny 26 to 30 incher that bites a bass jig that's been in there for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like some of those lakes, they just don't accept those fish, and you know, you'd be better off dumping them in Mille Lacs or somewhere else where people want to catch them and target them and take them home and eat them. You know,
well, the Mille Lacs thing, and Brad, I'm going to tell you right now, like the muskie situation, it's getting a lot of press. Some guys have caught some pretty big fish out of that lake recently. Yeah. And one of the things I get constantly tired of, and Brandon chastises me every time I mention the word muskie, but fair enough. I'm not going to give you that opportunity.
I chased those for a while.
They're a lot of fun. But there's something that happens in that lake that grows monumental fish. And do you think, I'm curious, I'm putting you on the spot.
Doesn't everything in that lake grow big?
Yeah.
Do the muskies hurt the walleyes?
No.
Okay, so good answer. Good answer.
Come on, man. Where's that biting? Come on.
They're eating bullhead. They're eating bullhead.
They eat all the smallmouth.
But there's obviously something.
Sorry.
I
had to say it.
Everyone does, right?
Yeah.
Well, smallmouth fillet. I mean, you deep fry that. You don't know the difference between that.
You're not going to.
I mean, yeah, the bucket brigade. We're gonna knock the sides off of everything. You know, like I mean,
yeah.
But the muskies. Go ahead.
I think personally, and I don't necessarily have an answer to the question I asked you guys, but ultimately in the muskie realm, especially on Mille Lacs, something special happens in that fishery. The largemouth grow huge. They really do if they're allowed to. The smallmouth, world class. That's everybody's destination. When you go south, like, man, I want to get to Mille Lacs.
It's the introduction, in my opinion, what I've seen there is I don't mean to make it this simple, but I truly think it is that Mille Lacs is a cold water fishery. We have like 175 or maybe 170 cold water lakes in Minnesota. And the tulipies are really key to growing big fish. And what a lot of guys don't understand, and this goes back to the guy that gets forward facing sonar and he's like, oh, hey, I got it. And he's cool, right? It's like, yeah, sweet. You don't know the way the lake lays out. Like, you don't even need that. Half the time, if you fish in Mille Lacs in the fall, and the tulipies are in there spawning, you can't see through it anyways. You got to throw your jig in there to catch them. But that's why they grow so big, is because you have your spawning isn't done in the spring. It's in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And that means your bait size dynamic is totally different. And when the tulibies come in, they all come in from.
Open that up a little bit. Elaborate on that. Your bait size dynamic means year, class,
Yeah.
months,
So your
years.
your class is offset. So in the spring, everything lays an egg I would say within probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And then at the end of July, everything's 1.5 inches, whatever, like that. So what is big in the spring? It's a tulibies, and your fish that's what's carrying you through.
Mhm.
So to answer your question, your muskies, your walleye, your predator fish aren't waiting around for food sources. They're not committed to going to secondary food sources or third or eating crayfish, right? So they're going down. And they're eating McDonald's
all the time.
all the time, and that's why they grow big. You can take a fish with shitty genetics and put it in to a lake, and he may not get long, but he'll get fat.
Mm-hmm.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. 100%. Next topic.
Okay. Well, all right. So I think that this comes down to, as our youth are growing up in a world where they have access to all this technology, start in a reasonable boat, work your way up, take advantage of the fisheries that are accessible, but you have to be involved. You've got to be involved to maintain those fisheries. Brandon nailed it on the head. We do not have the time necessarily to go to every town hall meeting regarding this, that, or the other thing, or I don't respond to those text messages and emails that I get arbitrarily about this fishery or a survey for this or whatever. But you might find the time, if something is of interest to you and your expectations or hope for the future generations, spend the 10 minutes, get on the phone with the legislature. If there are bills being introduced at the state level, it's not hard. In fact, they have answering services there that allow you to submit your opinion. So if there's something going on, and I don't care where you're at in this country, the beautiful thing about America is we as Americans have a voice, but you have to use it. And if you have an opinion about something, if there's something that's kind of teetering and not going the way you want it, you can call and express that opinion at any time. It doesn't have to be an election cycle.
Mhm.
It can be when it's occurring. Do you agree with the amount of money they're putting into the boat ramp at Mille Lacs? Do you feel like the ramp should be accessible in the upper Mississippi? Does anything that Brandon says hold water? That's an argument that we should have.
I'm ready.
But let's talk. The last topic I want to get into tonight, we're going to shift gears hard, is recently, if you guys are in tune with what's going on with Northland. Northland Tackle is a northern brand. It's a favorite of mine. I know it's a favorite of yours.
Fisherman's favorite.
Every tackle shop in the upper Midwest has that yellow rack full of jigs. It's one of the most recognizable, most effectively branded brands in the game. And they're moving to Texas. They were bought by an investment group, moving to Texas.
Well, to call them an investment group, I don't know. They own
They own a lot of brands.
They're an outdoor.
Yep. Grandview,
company.
right? Or what's the
GSM.
GSM?
Yeah. So they own a lot of hunting brands.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
brands.
Pure Fishing is another example. Let's give a comparison.
Rapala is another example.
Rapala is an example. They have brands that you understand, recognize independently, but they're under an umbrella.
Yeah.
Pure Fishing owns Abu Garcia, Berkeley, Pfluger.
GSM owns a lot of stuff.
They own a lot of
Trail
stuff.
camera. I mean, you name it, they have it all.
And
Mhm.
this conversation, I got watching the socials of people are like,
Oh, people are losing it.
Yeah, they're completely losing it. And I'm like, man, you guys don't realize that they have bigger budgets for R&D.
Yep.
This is a really good thing. Northland didn't have access to like sourcing. You
Mhm.
talk about everything going to tungsten now. You talk about the buying power for 4 or 5 different brands. Now we're not buying 100 pounds. They're buying 100 tons of
Yeah.
tungsten
Yeah.
at a crack.
Yeah.
They're buying it like it's a damn commodity.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, you have some of the best when you do that consolidation. I have not seen it go bad,
Mhm.
really. I mean, if you take an iconic brand, you look at Rapala, all they've done is buy and consolidate and market, and the products largely get better.
Mhm.
With Northland, I think it was one of those where it was the perfect time to have it happen because they kind of hit that.
They were there.
Oh, they were right there.
Yep.
And they held it back. And now I guess we'll see. I mean, I just had my meeting with them last week, and I'm super pumped for what's coming down the pipe.
This is what I wanted to get into. Is I feel like it's easy for people to be critical of outsourcing.
Yeah.
And whether that's iPhones from China, I got 2 of them. You're still taking advantage of technology. What?
China.
From China. China.
You gotta say it right.
That's right. I don't really. I do believe the American spirit is innovative, and it's built upon people that created the Northland brand, the Berkeley brand, the Upper Midwest brands, Humminbird and Minn Kota. Right?
Yeah.
Like these are Minn Kota largely was northern. I think Humminbird was more Alabama, Eufaula area. But the reality is, the American spirit drives to innovate. The American spirit drives to do better with everything and present better products to the consumer at a more reasonable level. However, Minnesota guys like we are, you see an iconic brand like that, it's easy to understand that people who don't want to investigate the reasons behind the move are grumpy about it.
They get negative. Yeah.
They do get negative.
Like, here's a best way of putting it. GSM bought Northland. Guess who my boss is? Charlie Peterson.
Right.
Jace Peterson.
Yeah.
I just talked to him this morning. Nothing changed on my end other than the name on my contract. That's all that changed.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing, because now these guys have access. I mean, these guys were killers before. Now they have access to the marketing knowledge from different brands. Can you imagine being in a room full of 8 or 9 marketers instead of 2 or 3 from Bemidji, Minnesota?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to create, out of those 2 young guys, you're going to create a bunch of wrecking balls.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys, when they're 40, are going to be able to come in anywhere and literally they're just going to do great.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're good people too.
Yeah,
They're
They're
great
fantastic.
people. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I love them.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
100%.
So what I want people to understand is that, especially our Minnesota friends that are listening to this, this is not a new thing. This is not something that just came out of left field. But Northland, I felt like, and Jeff Gustafson deserves a lot of credit for taking the brand south on his boat and truck wrap. For us, it's iconic. The yellow, the orange. You can walk into any bait shop, and if you needed a 1/4 ounce ball head jig, you know right where to go.
For the longest time.
Yes.
How many years it was a kind of a Midwest thing.
Mm-hmm.
You'd walk in, you'd see the spinny rack of spinner baits at every single gas station in freaking Minnesota. You walk in, you're like, yep, Northland spinner baits.
And they made some great bass baits.
They made awesome stuff.
Yeah.
black and orange, baby.
Yeah, jungle jigs and this and that, and over the years, to me, it's like, why would you get upset about that? Because it's a Minnesota family that built this company, and they built it into what it is, and they did an amazing job. And then they're passing the torch. They want it to be bigger. They want Jason Charlie. I mean, like Chad said, those guys are great, and it's not like, oh, we're shipping it off and it's going in the toilet. Like, if you have that mentality, you're brain dead.
I think they were too passionate about. I mean, you can second this, but I think they were too passionate about the fishing industry and what they have built, and to just sell it to get out from under it because they want to move on. That's not
It was
their
more about
intention.
the right buyer.
Yep.
They probably had other buyers.
Yeah. Anybody bought that.
The company was up here
Mm-hmm.
when they sold.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and interestingly, I would say in the last 5 years, they did a fantastic job of realizing the self-identification that they're the big fish in their pond. Because you can't take a brand like Northland and make it completely encompassing across this country, especially on the bass side of things, into the Southeast, right? Like, people
That's
are just
a tough nut to crack.
That is
isn't
a
it?
tough nut to crack. But they figured out, and I think a lot of the folks that they had there, some are my friends too that I've worked with for a long time. They took that brand and really, really sank the roots into Minnesota soil.
Well, let's talk about the blue sky here. So the blue sky on the end of it, right now, with knowing what we know as anglers here, right? Would you rather buy a crankbait company right now, or a jig company?
Yeah.
Jig company right now? I mean, that's the blue sky. GSM came in and went,
Duh.
Yeah. We'll buy some jigs.
We'll buy some jigs.
And we're going to sell a bunch of jigs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a smart buy.
Yeah.
It really was. And you could go through some of those southern bait shops and still find yellow bins of jigs. Like, it's not as established as it is here, but it's still recognizable. So I think that the value of the Northland brand, while being the big fish in the northern upper Midwest area, that was a good way to get to reestablish yourselves in the recent decade, right? But then to get it into the hands of somebody that, like you said, has marketing prowess, they have a better better reach into resources.
Yep.
You know, that's going to make what's a great product already is going to make it better, more accessible. And listen, if I own Northland, if I own Rapala, whatever, pick your poison. There's going to come a point where I'm tired of running it, where I'm getting up in years and I need to pass that torch. And you want to make sure if legacy matters, and it does to all of us, if legacy matters,
And it does to John.
100%.
that's right.
And all of his family
Yeah.
that's below him,
Yep.
that's within the company.
Yep.
If legacy matters, you want to make sure the handoff goes smoothly.
Yeah.
To somebody that's going to carry your legacy into the next generation.
I from that standpoint, talk about setting your family up to succeed.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are head of Northland now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they're going to do great with unlimited funds above their head to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're on the right track,
Yeah.
and they're good boys too. I mean, we fish against them. They're
They
not,
can catch them too.
they're not a sit in an office and tell people what to do type of family, from what I've gathered. Like, I mean, we've been up at I Falls and fishing that tournament up there, and it's time to take the tournament tents down and help out and throw a little elbow grease in to help out the tournament committee, and Craig's there, and Travis is there, and Jace is there, and everybody's like,
Every one of them.
yeah, they're not just hey, we're the Petersons and we got Northland Tackle. Like, they're genuine human beings, and
They love to fish.
yeah, and they'll talk to you or me or whoever,
Mhm.
and it's great. I love it. I think it's great.
It is.
It's going to be interesting, the future of this, and I think you're going to see more of that across the board. But a lot of times when you see these, we'll use the word merger, right, or acquisition. It's a negative thing in a lot of cases. In this circumstance, and I think really in the fishing industry, if it's going to be acquired by people that launch their boat on the weekends, that have a care in the world about who can buy a boat next, or who have a care in the world about access and the future of the fishery, like, that's these guys. And I've worked with them over the years.
Yeah.
I know that the Northland objective that was created way back when is still going to be prevalent. That's not going away. And just because Northland proper may not live in Bemidji, Minnesota, whatever, does not mean that you're not going to have access to the Bemidji, to the Northland quality that you've come accustomed to having.
Mhm.
And the unlimited access in every freaking store, the big yellow rack.
Yeah, yellow rack with bulk jigs.
Yeah.
That was genius.
Pick-
She was like, "What color?"
Oh my God.
Yellow's horrible.
Yeah,
Everybody's gonna see yellow.
Where's that yellow rack?
That's right. And to Jeff Gustafson's benefit too, I think that his boat wrap and his truck wrap stands out when it comes to
100%.
driving in on those Elite Series weigh-ins and boat launches in the morning. It stands out.
Yeah.
It is a recognizable brand. If you don't even live to fish, you know where to buy jig.
True. I mean, Northland knows how to build. They've known how to build a jig for 40 years.
Mhm.
I mean, and where they come in too is part of that sale.
Mhm.
They bought all Northland's mistakes. They know what not to do with any of their other. Hey, Northland tried that 25 years ago. Do not
Don't
put
do it
that hook
again.
on that jig. I'm telling you, it'll bend out every time.
Mhm.
And but the other thing that goes with that is when you're a northern angler, especially when we start talking about smallmouth and things like that, you're not going to tell me that anyone down south is a better smallmouth fisherman than any of these northern boys up here. So, especially if they got a few Northland jigs and they know how to. Let's talk about the hair jig.
Yeah.
How many guys thought that was a joke when you're throwing a hair?
All of them
Yeah.
for a long time.
Every one of them.
Yeah.
We were told back in the day, don't be talking about that.
Yeah,
That's a
keep that
walleye thing.
under your cuff.
They were kicking people's ass on Rainy Lake for a long time,
25 years ago.
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And we're like 5 years ago, we're like, this thing's sweet.
Yeah. Boy, they really bite that.
Why wasn't I doing this 25 years ago? We're like, we were.
That's what that yellow means. When you roll into an access nowadays, you roll into an access and like Jeff's got that. You roll in, it's like, that's that northern boy. He's a stick.
Yep.
That's kind of what you got.
You want to know something? I got to tell you guys a story. The northern guys can fish. And I think that for a long time, bass fishing was a southern boys' pastime. Would you agree? For a long time.
Yeah.
You
For a
you
lot
were
of
on the
people.
cutting edge. You were on the cutting edge. You were on the cutting edge of northern bass fishing. I know that. I was working at North American Fisherman in, I want to say 2012, 13 timeline, and that was falling apart. That's another story for another day. Hot mess. And I decided to look elsewhere and managed to land a career at Bassmaster. And that word, I'd reached out to the lenders hoping to stay here. I'm a northern guy, right? I don't belong in the South. I'm too fat. I sweat. Did you see the sweat ring I had on my hat when we started
Dude,
the show?
You do sweat.
Oh
Yeah, you
God! And it doesn't matter what time of year it is. I'm a sweating sucker.
40 degrees and winds blowing. You're like, why the hell are you sweating?
No. Yeah. If you guys want to go back to the beginning of the show, look right here, and wherever my logo is, it was covered.
I actually had a thought. I'm like, the hats come that way?
They might. Thomas Allen approved.
You must have been getting a
What?
fish house out of the basement.
We were getting a fish house.
Anyways, sorry.
Anyway, so I accepted a job at Bassmaster. Scary time for us. We moved south. Before I moved, while we were kind of prepping everything, I was visiting a buddy near Buffalo, and I can take you to the square footage on the road. I've told this story on here before, so if you've heard it already, I'm not sorry. I'm going to tell it again, but it motivated me to do right. My phone lit up. Remember, I'd accepted the job. We're already moving. I talked to lenders. It said Lender Media. I'm like, God, please save me from going to Alabama. Like, I don't want to have to go to Alabama. It was Ron Linder.
Mhm.
He goes, Thomas Allen, Ron Linder, Linder Media.
How's it going?
In-Fisherman. And I'm like, I know who you are. I mean, this is a big moment. He goes, my brother Alphonse and I wanted to congratulate you on your job, and I wanted to commission you to take the northern perspective of bass fishing to them southern boys and let them know that we can catch bass too. And that was it.
He's right.
Yep. End of
So-
story.
In my first week, and you might hate me for this, my first week I went into the tournament director's office. I said, we need to get onto some northern fisheries. We need to go places that are renowned for tremendous smallmouth and largemouth fishing. And the first item on that list was Mille Lacs.
Mm-hmm.
And we came that year. That's my fault.
You see all those power fishermen struggle out there that first year?
I did,
Oh, yeah.
but did you remember Ish Monroe and Dean Rojas's
Yeah.
day one limit of largemouth that was 23 pounds?
You can't do that 2 days.
Can't do it there.
No.
But
He was
anyways,
burnt after that.
my point with this is I think that the fishing community largely built on the bass theme across the country for a long time, and they learned how to bass fish in those southern reservoirs. But as the northern angler decided that interest in bass fishing was growing, nothing against walleyes, because they have their place here. And if you want to catch a walleye, you come to Mille Lacs, you come to Minnesota. But bass fishing is pretty special here. And I think that the talent that we're able to develop here with the fisheries we have access to, with the technology that we have access to, and I know you're going to agree with this, walleye guys were ahead of the bass community in the technologically savvy world forever, and maybe still are to an extent.
So yeah. So
Yeah, I'd agree.
kind of. I mean,
Things have changed recently, but
it has, but because yes and no. I'd say in the finesse approach and the electronics approach, because forever, a lot of guys, they're staring at the water, they're not staring at the graph.
Mhm.
And we were always staring at the graph. And then when you come into finesse approaches, especially when you talk smallmouth, I mean, half the time you're finesse approach, unless you're throwing an A-rig, whatever. But unless that's where I think it shined, where we were able to cross over those realms and realize that, hey, a lot of these walleye guys that actually knew what they were doing, especially the guys that adopted artificials early, really excelled in their career. I mean, there's guys that are still holding on to live bait that.
this is a discussion someday on here we'll talk about. I think that the walleye world is in trouble.
Yeah.
And if they would simply eliminate live bait from the competitive arenas 100%,
Mhm.
that would fix a lot of things.
Yeah.
The live bait thing, I mean, it's nice to put a crawler, fill them up with air and troll that across Lake Erie. But what John Hoyer did on Lake Erie last year was unprecedented.
Mhm.
Went to the big lake and casted for these suckers and won.
Yeah. And
Right.
that's not just the only time that's happened. Like, those guys are doing that religiously now. And that's what they do.
There's nothing wrong with
They're
it. but
damn good at it.
They are good at it, but it's setting a precedent. And I think that, I went south wanting the southern community of anglers to understand that those of us in the north did know a thing or two, and it's changed. I think that there's been a couple anglers over the years. Who's the cat that fished from South Dakota? Would you remember? Jamie Freilich. That's
Yep.
right. So he was one of the first ones. You had a couple others. Van Dam, obviously, but I mean, you don't want to take away from what he knew in the north, but he was dominant everywhere.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I'm not saying he doesn't count, but you started to see an increase of the northern angler showing up in these national level tournaments and playing a hand and
Yep.
being good. And I think that what the Linders wanted, and when Ron called me, I wanted to make sure that they got their just due,
Yep.
that they were recognized for being good in their arena.
They're getting it now.
They are getting it.
Big time.
They're getting it now.
That's 100%.
It's come full
true.
circle, I think.
Yeah, and I think to our chagrin a little bit, where we have lakes that are harder to get access to. We have fisheries that might be struggling a little bit. We've got youth anglers that are coming up through the ranks with perhaps correct expectations, maybe inflated expectations. And I think that it's our job in this room right here, and the friends and family and associates that we all have, to make sure that foundation is first. Make sure that you have an opportunity to get on the water, to fish the way that you want to fish, and leave the drama of who's leading who at home, because if you want to be good, you got to be good without the gear first. And I don't want to preach, but I mean that. Like, you cannot be somebody recognized on the water if you don't have that foundation. And I don't give a rip if it's soccer. I don't care if it's archery. I don't care if it's anything. If you don't understand the baseline of the outdoor pursuit that you're currently engaged in, you can't be great. Technology or not.
Yep.
Fundamentals.
Mm-hmm.
It's important. I know it means a lot to you, Chad. I know you spend time talking to youth. You've been to our high school club numbers of times talking about that.
They won't let me in there.
Well, it's because you can't not say bad words.
That's true.
But it's shiny when he does. Fellas, listen, this is what I'd hope for. I want everybody that watches this podcast or listens to this podcast to not only be entertained, but take something home and understand that we're the same as you. We've got boats. We've got boat payments, except for Chad. If you're smart, you don't have a boat payment. And you're not going to have a boat payment.
Nope.
And I'll continue to contribute to that fun as long as we compete against each other, because one day you're going to contribute to me.
I got my eye on a boat right now, so
Yeah.
we'll see.
We can talk about that sometime.
We'll see.
Time to start donating.
I have a lot of fun fishing against these guys. Listen, this is In-Fisherman Storyline from Brad Hawthorne, Chad Foster, Brandon Cizek. I'm Thomas Allen. Join us here next time. We'll catch you right back.